Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your patience as we begin today. On behalf of Juliana and Eric's parents, Drew and Donna Sullivan, and Juliana's parents, Clara and Dennis, Eric's siblings, Doug and Wendy Sullivan, Emily and Jimmy Livingood, Julie and Brian Schill, Eric's multiple nieces and nephews, Bailey, Keegan, Griffin and Ella Sullivan, Morgan and Gavin Schill, Dina Livingood, Eric's parents-in-laws, Dennis and Clara Day, and brother-in-law, Paul Day, Sky, Parker, and Abigail Day. We welcome you to our gathering this afternoon to celebrate the life of our dear friend, Eric Sullivan. Husband, son, brother, uncle, friend, teacher, mentor, colleague, adventurer, Chaco wearer, mathematician. Eric, as we know, loved and lived deeply. As Juliana has said a few times over these difficult yet beautiful final weeks of Eric's life, Eric did it his way, always staying true to himself and his devotion and care for those he loved. And today we continue to honor his way with a simple ceremony during which we will hear from important people in Eric's life who will share with us what Eric means to them. After each speaker, we will hold a moment of silence while enjoying a few pictures that Eric took on some of his recent adventures, combined with a few of his favorite quotes. So we'll begin with our first speaker. Eric's older brother, Doug, has known Eric his whole life. There is no one that perhaps knows more about the shenanigans that Eric got into than Doug.
You'll pardon me, but I brought some notes to stay on track. I am Doug Sullivan, Eric's older brother, and as I've heard a few hundred times this week, wow, you look a whole lot like him. Thanks for that honor. It's truly an honor. Before I say a few things about my brother, let me say a few thank yous first, and I promise this won't become a Grammy speech. I brought my notes. On behalf of the Sullivan and the Day family, we thank Carroll College so much for stepping forward and giving us this venue where we can celebrate Eric in a place that he made so much impact, where he really began to cement his legacy that we're all going to be here to celebrate today. And so thank you to Carroll for giving us this space and this time together. And another thank you I need to make is John M. Thank you for loving him. Thank you for supporting him and holding him up and guiding him, sometimes holding him down. You're his rock. You meant everything to him, and he loved you, and he still loves you. And what I thank you the most for is for understanding him. Because he wasn't always easy to understand. And then I have one more thank you that I want to extend to every one of you here. Thank you to all of you for loving him, for trekking with him, for learning from him, for teaching him, because all of you that were here today were part of this process of him making this huge impact in the world. Eric's impact was far-reaching, and if you need any proof of it, just look around you here. I mean, whether you're from the far reaches of Montana, or the far reaches of the United States, or as we know, even friends that want to tune in with us today from New Zealand. So he reaches around the world. Eric's impact is big. Make no mistake, our brother, your husband, your son, our friend, made a huge impact. And that impact wasn't only far-reaching, it was really wide, too. Because in here today we have family, we have educators, we have students, and we have friends. And we kind of learned a new term with friends, your adventure friends. We learned a lot this last week about what adventure friends do with Eric. I can't repeat all of it here, but stick around and we'll talk about some of those things later. His impact was wide, whether he was standing in front of a board expressing his love for a perfect proof, standing down in the woods amongst the trees smelling the pine, up on top of a mountain peak looking across the snow-capped peaks before him, laying under the stars, always exclaiming how wonderful the world was, what it got to offer and what it put forward. And what all of us got to do in one way or another is we got to live with him the way he lived, which was adventure. And a lot of you, I see you nodding. Eric lived every day with an adventure. That was his theme. That was his ideal, to be adventuresome. There was never any place I saw this more than when I got to visit him a few weeks after his first major brain surgery in Salt Lake. Maybe 4 weeks. Maybe 4 weeks afterwards, is that about right? And I got off the airplane and Eric and Jay were there to pick me up from the airport. And Eric had climbed into the front seat. Jay was standing behind the Jeep, and she, we were lifting my bag into the car, she looks down at my shoes. They were hiking shoes. She looks back up at me and she says, "Good." She says, "Eric has one rule, and that is that every day after his radiation treatment, we will have an adventure. Are you ready?" About 2 hours later, I'm chasing my brother, the mountain goat, and his wife and 2 dogs up some dusty trail outside of Salt Lake. And I kid you not, because I went back and looked at my Strava this morning to make sure I was right. It was a few miles and several thousand feet of elevation gain. He'd had radiation that morning. And we stood on top of this mountain. We looked towards Park City at all the snow-capped peaks. We looked back at the Salt Lake City down below us. And I made some snide comment like, "You know, you're pretty badass." And he looked at me, and you all know this, that little upturn right here. And he smiled, and in the same casual yet serious way, he looked at me and he said, "Well, movement is medicine." I've heard those words before, but he took them and he made them his. And he would want to know that every one of you will take that to heart when you leave here today. No matter what's going on inside of you, no matter what's going on outside of you, have an adventure. And remember that movement is medicine. And that's something he taught every one of us. Thanks for being here.
Our second speaker today is Eric's friend and adventure partner, Jacob Dysart. Jacob and Eric became fast friends and adventure partners upon moving to Montana. They both embraced the wild, adventurous possibilities. Jacob?
Hey everybody, I'm Jacob. You just heard about the Adventure Friends. Most of you have not had the opportunity, or did not have the opportunity to go hiking with Eric, so I felt it best to give you some of the lessons I learned along the way, so that you could get a full experience for what it was like. So, first and foremost, Eric loved talking to people. If you're on trail and you see anyone, Eric will talk to that person. You're not getting away from it. And he will talk to them about anything. One time we were going up to Hard Lake, and we came across mountain lion hunters. And we had a full-length conversation about their hunt, and where they had been in Hard Lake. And he didn't even think to ask, well, were there any mountain lions? It's just how he rolled. If it was a thru hiker, we all know Eric was a thru hiker, he would get a full trail report from them. He would give them a full trail report for what they were about to walk into, and if he could, he would offer them anything that he could. Any snacks, advice, scenes to look at, he was there to offer it. And then the last one is, excuse me, trying to hold together like the rest of us. The last one, whew. One second, please. Is if that person has a dog. You all know Eric had his dogs, but he loved everyone else's dog too. And he couldn't stop petting dogs, complimenting dogs, if he ran across one on the trail. And that was just who he was. The second lesson was Eric was really good at sneakily pushing people out of their boundaries. I know some of you have heard about pack rafts. If you have not heard about pack rafts, Eric really wanted one. And he talked about them for months on end, and I'm pretty sure Jay's rule was don't talk to Eric about pack rafts, which I did not follow. Until Eric said, yeah, if we got pack rafts, we could do the Bob Marshall Open, which is a wilderness cross-country hike / race that is completely uncharted, and the way to make up the best amount of time in that is to take a pack raft through the spring runoff in the Bob Marshall, which is the equivalent of whitewater rafting with a pool noodle. So we had to talk him down from that a little bit, and we finally settled on doing the Pacific Northwest trip, which was basically pushing me out of the boundary because it was 4,000 feet straight up, straight out of the car for the first 5 miles. Into a rainstorm, where we were cold and wet, and had hot chocolate off of a smoky tart. That's how we got our water that night. So smoked hot chocolate, don't recommend it, but it's good if you're cold. The next day we got up, got lost, because the Pacific Northwest Trail is not marked. And after getting lost, we ended up bushwhacking through a willow thicket, and came around a bend, and I had somehow taken the lead, and we ran straight into the backside of a grizzly eating by about 30 yards or so. So I pulled out my bear spray, put my hands up, did the whole thing. Eric's behind me and says, "There's a bear, back up slowly." To which I said, "I'm trying, you're in my way." So bear stops eating, lifts its head, bolts away from us. Thank goodness. We decided that we should probably turn around because bears eating food don't normally run away from people. So we turned around and there was nothing there, and decided we didn't want to bushwhack again. We were just going to keep walking forward behind the bear. Because we gave it time, the entire way Eric was showing me how many languages he knew. Yelling, "Hola, bear!" I would yell, "Chill it, Sullivan, you might like Mexican food." "Konnichiwa, bear!" "Eric, might like sushi." So this is how that went. In the end, we ended up having to backtrack the entire thing because we got completely snowed out and had to turn around and go back through through the thicket anyway. So the last lesson, and the most important, and Doug just talked about this, it was a mountain goat. He really taught us how to realize you weren't going to catch him, and that was okay, because when you got there, he would be standing like this, every time, looking around and going, isn't this great? And he's right. So, Doug, you're absolutely right. The best way to honor him is to go out and enjoy those things. Get out of your comfort zone, make new friends on trail. Thank you.
Our next speaker this afternoon is Eric's good friend and colleague, Ted Wendt, Dr. Ted Wendt.
I have some notes too. Not notes, I have the whole thing written down. Good afternoon, and thank you all for coming. It really is good to see so many familiar faces, friends, family, colleagues, students, former students, current students. Everybody was Eric's student in one way or another. Eric was really only at Carroll for a short time on the academic scale, really only 2 academic generations. But it's pretty clear to me that he had a tremendous impact during that time. Eric and I both started working at Carroll on the same day in the fall of 2013. He had just finished his graduate work at the University of Colorado in Denver, and I had just left a faculty position in Wisconsin in hopes of being closer to home. During those first few years, we relied on each other pretty heavily. We both came into the position with a lot of energy. Maybe not a lot of wisdom, but a lot of energy. And we were determined to build a curriculum that would engage the students and would convey the excitement and beauty of mathematics. We talked about ideas for classroom activities, for computer labs, extracurricular stuff, things we wanted to try in the classroom. And one of my favorite things, inevitably, it was one of us who said it. We said it back and forth, but inevitably, across the hallway, I'd hear a shout of, "Hey, is this dumb?" And I would yell that equally as much, and of course the response was always, "Yeah, but let me know how it goes, because I want to try it." I learned so much from him, and he always pushed me to be better at whatever it is I was doing. And he was such a nerd. He was such a nerd, and he was the best type of nerd. If you ever asked him, "Hey, can I ask you a random question?" he would just look at you and say, "Wait, so this question was chosen arbitrarily from a set of all questions?" He'd be walking, and he'd spend lots of time outside. He'd look up at the sky and say, "Whoa, check out that cool Helmholtz instability in the clouds." It's like, yeah, the Helmholtz ones. So that's when you have 2 fluids flowing past each other, and the shear forces make little loopies. So he didn't say, "Hey, look at the cool loopies." He said, "Look at the Helmholtz instabilities." This is already mentioned, and if you've read any of the posts online, you've heard this, but yeah, at least once a week he would come in the hallway where all the doors were open, and he'd say, "Guess what, everybody? We get to do math all day today." And it was genuine every single time. This one's only for those of you who do any sort of typesetting in math. He would come into my office after a frustrating day. He'd close the door, and on the board, he'd write \begin rant. And he would go out. And when he was done, he would write \end. Right. And then he would leave. He took part in at least 10 public math debates here, which, that's, well, one, that's a lot of math, that's a lot of debates, and he was all in. His most recent one, he argued the greatest mathematical model in the math debate under the stars, the first of hopefully many. This is springtime, late springtime event. He argued for the greatest result of Leonard Euler, which was Euler's formula. Somehow he argued that the greatest mathematician of all time was Paul Erdős. He's such a nerd. Such a nerd. The greatest mathematician who died before their time, the greatest theorem of all time, the most important equation, Navier-Stokes. He would argue Navier-Stokes for just about anything. If you ask him what the coolest math is, Navier-Stokes. If you ask him what the most important math is, Navier-Stokes. Most important unsolved mathematical problem, Navier-Stokes. But my favorite of his was his argument for the greatest data visualization. Some of you remember this. He made an argument for a map that he said showed 7 dimensions of data for Napoleon's campaign into and retreat from Russia. And he added an 8th dimension by overlaying the 1812 overture. Watching him teach was just incredible. He was truly in his element in the classroom. Of course, he could also quote from all the classic nerd lore movies. My favorite, just before he took sabbatical, he would say things like, from The Lord of the Rings, "I've got to get away from these confounded students hanging on the bell all day, never giving me a moment's peace. I want to see mountains again, Ted. Mountains. And then find someplace quiet where I can finish my book." Now, those of you who've seen the movie and know the book, you remember how that conversation ends? They can't go there today? He brought so much to Carroll. He was a demanding professor, but he was incredibly supportive. He knew how to bring out the best in his students. He was amazing in the classroom, charismatic, energetic, knowledgeable, and as I said, just the perfect amount of nerd. He was a champion of undergraduate research. He mentored dozens of student projects. So many students credit him for helping them pass a class, publish a paper, get a job, get into graduate school. And he truly, truly loved every minute of it. Except the faculty assembly meetings. When he was diagnosed with cancer, he went through several rounds of treatment and surgeries, but he continued to do what he loved. He taught, he mentored, he hiked, he biked. He sat in on classes to continue learning. In fact, he was scheduled to sit in on a quantum mechanics course this spring. Because of course, quantum mechanics. He nerded out over cool data science stuff. I could go on and on about Eric. And like people have said, there's so many stories to be shared. But I'll leave that to y'all to share amongst each other. I do want to finish with a quote from one of Eric's favorite movies. And if you haven't seen it, it really helps too. Those of us who knew him best talk about him often. I swear the stuff he pulled. Sometimes it makes me sad though, Eric being gone. I have to remind myself that some birds aren't meant to be caged. Their feathers are just too bright. And when they fly away, the part of you that knows it was a sin to lock them up does rejoice. But still, the place you live in is that much more drab and empty that they're gone. I guess I just miss my friend. We miss you, Eric, but we rejoice that you're free. Happy trails, my friend. Until we meet again.
The next speaker we would like to welcome to share their thoughts is family friend and fellow avid trail user, Leslie Walton.
Wow. Talk about impact. I don't wear tacos, so I wore my trail shoes. Okay. I thought this would be easy. I didn't bring notes. She told me it could be short. When you're on the trail at 5:30 in the morning with a headlamp, it's really kind of scary. But when you know that there's a chance you might run into Eric and Shelby or Eric and Aspen, you get out of bed and you do it. And once or twice a week, without fail, our paths would cross. And we'd stop and we'd talk about the weather or the trail conditions or the dogs, because nothing else matters when you're on the trail. After their lengthy stints in Salt Lake City, they got home late one Wednesday night and I was out running. And who do I run into but Eric and Aspen? And literally, because I did not stop running until I was in his arms. He was the last person I expected to see that day. He was a little AMA. I don't think his doctors wanted him out running on the trails. So I hope that Johnny and Eric both got some peace of mind knowing that I was out there, hopefully running into him. And I told that story to Eric just a few weeks ago, and he had one word for me: surreal. Most of you knew Eric longer than I did, and all of his kind of exotic adventures. I don't have great trail stories like Jacob. But it seemed pretty exotic when 3 months post-craniotomy, he wanted to get behind the boat and wake surf. And so we all kind of took a breath in, and he's like, "I have brain cancer. Why shouldn't I, right? I gotta live." So he surfed, and we all cheered him on, and he fell, and we all held our breath, until he stood up. He got up out of the water, and we saw his shiny bald head. And then he surfed, and then he skied. And you know, I mean, why not? Live life until you can live life no more. When the cancer kind of took him off the trails a little bit, it didn't keep him from the sidelines, the finish lines. Never will I forget finishing Don't Fence Me In, and he's right there, finishing the rut, and he's right there, the biggest supporter of the things that he loved. So I say to you, as they have all said, with his big impact, get outside, go for a walk, ride your bike, and regardless of the temperature, because I guarantee you, he had snow tires for his bike and not his car. You know, get your kayak, your canoe, your stand-up paddleboard, your fishing pole. Take those moments because they're precious. And I guarantee you, if you're on Mount Helena, he's with you.
The next speaker we would like to welcome to share their thoughts is a former student of Eric's, James Eilenfeld. Throughout the years, James and Eric would often meet and discuss many aspects of math and life. So, James?
Hello. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come up here and talk about Dr. Sullivan. I had the opportunity to be one of his students. I was probably the student that was hanging on the bell all day. In fact, for 3.5 years straight, I just hung on his bell. He and I spent a great deal of time together. He became one of my good friends, in fact. I appreciated the time I got to spend with Eric. He was not only a friend, but he became a hero to me. He wasn't a hero in the common sense. He wasn't someone who ran into a burning building to save my life or anything. But he did teach me many things. He taught me mathematics. And in that, he taught me the most important thing that I learned from him, which was how to handle problems, how to comport yourself when you are dealing with something challenging, traumatic. In my time with him, he taught me so very much, but that was the most important thing. And I watched as he deteriorated a little bit. But even though his body changed, Eric didn't change at all. And it was amazing to me. He continued to teach me long after I was his student. And he continues to teach me today that even though you're struggling, there's beauty in that struggle. And there are things to learn. Take a breath. Failure is okay. I was so afraid of failure before I met Eric. In my previous occupation, it was highly hazardous, and in school they taught us, their mantra was initial success or total failure. If you failed, it was the end. He laughed at that. He said, James, we humans, we live at the mountaintop of humanity's failures. So fail and learn. Continue to fail. I had the opportunity to spend some time with him just before his passing, and he reiterated those things over and over to me as we sat at his kitchen table. And it reminded me of all the time I had spent in his office learning those things. And it was amazing to sit there with the same person I had learned so much from. I would have thought someone that had gone through such an ordeal would change so very much, but he didn't. He remained the same person I love. I'm so thankful to have known him. Thank you.
The next speaker we would like to welcome is another former student of Eric's, Jessica Bauer.
Hello. I apologize if I'm a bit emotional. I had to fly a bit to get here. The first time I met Dr. Sullivan, I wasn't in his class. I was struggling with my homework. It might have been for Ted's calculus. Sorry to call you out, Ted. And I hadn't gotten into the habit of figuring out how to go ask for help yet, because I was used to doing really well in classes, and then all of a sudden I'm like, this was kind of hard. And so I was looking for help, and it's like, okay, well, Ted's not in the office right now. Dr. Klein's not in the office right now. I've heard about Dr. Sullivan, maybe I'll go in there. So knocked on his door and was like, I'm not in your class and you're not teaching this class currently, but can you help me with this right now? And he did, which was great because I did well on that homework. And then I spent a lot of time actually getting help from him in courses that I was not taking from him because his office door was open, and if his office hours were open, it didn't matter if it wasn't his class. He would help you, and he would take that time. And that's real, like, that's just how, like, I mean, anyone who took a class with him, which I recognize and see a lot of you, like, that's just how he was, but like, beyond even just a teacher, he would take time to be a friend as well, just to everybody. There's the 100-hour math competition that, well, it was 96 and now they extended it 4 more hours because, you know, 100's a lot easier to explain to people than when you're like 96. And so, the first time I ever met him and Juliana was at one of these dinners because all the Carroll professors do a real good job of being like, well, we're going to make sure that you guys eat during this because it's 100 hours and you're doing math. You need to feed yourselves. And so I go there and they're cooking steak. And I'm like, yes, steak. This is my first year of college. I'm like, you know, we get to go to a professor's house and they're going to make a steak. That sounds great. And that started a long chain of every time I went to Dr. Sullivan's house, they would make steak, but then the grill would break somehow. Every time. And I don't know why, and I apologize for cursing your grill. I don't know what it was, but every single time it was great. Like, we still got, like, we would cook it in the oven, we cook it on the stovetop, whatever we needed to do. But that's, like, you know, adaptability, helping people out, just everything. And like, I thank him a lot for everything that he did because, like, continuously, like, again, he just continued to go on. I'm the school that I'm going to right now for grad school. I showed up at his door and I was like, hey, so I got this application and they're waiving my fee. It's due tomorrow. Could you write me a letter of rec? And he did, and I got in, because I'm going there. And I actually got a fellowship as well off of that acceptance, and so they were like, you gotta go talk to the dean. So I walked into the dean's office, and he, like, once I was there, and they're like, so how do you make a perfect cup of tea? Because as one of his students, we were trying to come up with ideas because we get to do math every day, and there's a lot of different ways to do math, and one of those ways is making a better cup of tea than what you do currently. Well, maybe not. Maybe you've read our paper. But that's just something that now, like, I have, was that he's like, I want a better thing for this class. Like, one of my things I set up, all the students kind of struggle with it. I want something more concrete. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know, tea, question mark? And he was like, that sounds like a great idea. So we came up with this whole paper, and it's now published on the internet, and people use it for their classes to teach students on how, like, a bunch of differential equations and things that are associated with tea. And now I have a lot of conversations with people who look at my CV and they're like, you have this publication about tea, can you talk to me about that? Because math is scary, but I understand tea. I had the great opportunity to be his student, but also just a friend, and then also just Juliana and Eric always opened their house to me plenty of times. I wasn't able to travel home a lot when I came to Carroll. And you'd see me walking around campus and I'd get an email like 2 minutes later. And it's like, phone alert. Hey, I saw you walking around and it's Thanksgiving. Do you want to come up, like, do you want to have Thanksgiving with us? Hey, I saw you walking around and it's New Year's. Do you want to have New Year's with us? And I'm just happy, I guess, that I got to intersect paths with Dr. Sullivan and Juliana and all of his family too, because I just happened to like just cross paths a lot, and you don't get to do that a lot. And I'll close out with a fun little comment. It's just the first time I ever heard Dr. Sullivan swear. He had decided with Ted that it would be a great idea to take me, a sophomore, and another student to the joint mathematics meetings, like the really, really big math meetings. And we got tapas, which was fantastic, and was not the first time we got to use the department card for tapas. But what was great is, you know, you're traveling across the country. We had to, you know, go to Seattle. We're like, okay, well, our clothes are a bit wrinkly, so I'm gonna hang them up in the bathroom. You know, turn the heat on the shower real hot, and you know they'll de-wrinkle our clothes. What we didn't realize was that the amount of steam generated off of this hotel, because we got a very nice hotel, would cause a significant amount of steam, and it was enough to set off the fire alarm. And so that was a fun text message to just be like, so you may have heard that the fire alarm at our hotel went off. That's okay. We just set it off. There's not a fire, it's just we set off the fire alarm, and it's just two text messages from both Ted and Eric, just WTF? And yeah, you'll be happy to know I did steam my clothes today, and I did not set off the fire alarm. And you know, if there's one thing, you know, you guys can walk away with the one piece of knowledge I can give to you that maybe you didn't have is you can't set off the fire alarm with steam in most hotels. Thank you.
So we'd like to invite up Juliana Hollows right now. Juliana will be reading some excerpts from her son Barrick's recent science homework. He bravely completed a lab assignment on brain cancer and out of the mouths of children.
Hello. Thank you for letting me share a little bit of time to talk about Eric's influence. So I know Eric as a satellite in space who, on occasion, as a moon to Ryan and my son Barrick, come into contact with Eric and his work. So my husband works with Eric at the college, and both Eric and him have allowed to let me speak a little bit on their behalf, so I'm about to say a bunch of things. No, I'm kidding. So I got to know Eric through the eyes of my partner as well as my son, and every time we would run into each other and our worlds would collide, it would always be really great and fun, and I'd always learn something new, and he was just very positive. And my husband and son typically like to be very close and introvert and quiet in the house, and so it's not often that I get to see bits of their world and what kind of sticks in their mind. But Eric was one of those people that would come into our world that I would hear often and the relationships they had, so I particularly enjoyed that. So with that being said, my son, who is quite wonderful, doesn't always talk or share what he thinks and feels, even with me as a mom. And sometimes it's very difficult for him to get his words out. And I knew that Eric was someone special because my son would bring up Eric, which is very, very unique. I have a best friend of 20-some years, and I share all crazy stories, goes on trips. I don't think he's ever mentioned her once. But Eric, coming into our world on several occasions, has somehow managed to stay in his mind and come up. So the first time that my son brought up a little bit about Eric was when we went paddle boarding. And so getting my son to do risks and do things like that can be a bit of a thing, but here comes Eric and John Ann on paddle boards, and off goes Barrick following and having fun, and we did end up getting a paddleboard after that. And I can't say that it was directly related to Eric, but it was rather quickly that we did enjoy that experience. And Barrick knew that Eric was going to go down for one of his first treatments for cancer in Salt Lake, and out of the blue he decided to draw a picture of Dad and his one friend. I thought it was so cute and so sweet, and it was Eric on a paddleboard with Ryan, and he wanted to go and pick him out gifts that he thought would be comfortable. And I love taking my son to just pick out whatever he wants, because I get to see parts of his brain and what he's thinking. And he was like, slippers, a mug, and candy. That's all you need when you have those moments. And so it was enjoyable. The second time around that Eric came up was this last summer. We were mowing the lawn, and Eric just stopped. He's 13. He just turned 13. We're trying to teach him some daily living skills, and I'm tired of mowing our lawn, so hoping that he gets that skill going. He stops, and he just says, "We need to buy cinnamon." I thought, this is my son. You'll be doing something, and you just don't know what's going to come up. And he's thinking about cinnamon or mowing lawns. I said, okay, well, we'll get some cinnamon. He goes, no, we need to get it for Eric, because I've learned that cinnamon fights cancer. And just out of the blue, and so Eric is on his mind. He is thinking of him. Big impressions. And I just thought, okay, here we go, and that's pretty wonderful, and off we went. So at the end of this semester at school, our son has homework, and oftentimes I do the solid parent thing, trust but verify. And he said he had done his science lab. And so as a good duty, I trust you, but I'm going to verify. And when Ryan and I opened up, well, I went over and opened up, and then Ryan came over to see what his lab report was on. It was on brain cancer. And so I knew that Eric again had been on his mind. And so I thought it was very interesting and spoke volumes to me that our son, who has a lot of inside thoughts and keeps words and feelings to himself, chose 3 different times to share something to me that he cared deeply about, and that was Dad's one good friend. And I'm sure my husband has many others. So with his permission, he's allowed me to share a little bit about brain cancer. and what he has learned and understood from that in his world. And he said, if you have symptoms like seizures, headaches, and memory loss, and can't move or see, you should contact a trusted adult, because they'll let you know. He said, some people really forget what they're doing, and forgetting what you're doing at the moment can be really frustrating. And I'm sure there were times that there was frustration. He said, you have to stay in bed. And for this lab report, he had to have a thesis. And his thesis was that cancer is not fun. He said, my thesis about brain cancer is how it is dangerous. Brain cancer happens more when you're older. It's really deadly. It is not fun because it makes you sick. And I rest my case. Brain cancer can be dangerous. It is not fun. And it just spoke to me that even from his mind, he could see someone who touched his heart, who was a lot of fun when our orbits would touch, and didn't want that individual for Eric not to have fun. So I'm glad that I got to know Eric through the eyes of those I love, and to share those memories and impacts that he's had in the short time with our family. Thank you.
We're nearing the end of the time of our formal program here. I'm going to say a few words, and then we're going to have a short slideshow that Eric's sisters have made. But Joanna did give me permission to, actually she just put it in the notes that I needed to share a memory. I was like, just one, and I will keep it to one. Memory of Eric. So I'm Catherine Greiner, I'm a colleague of Eric's, and the other night, I can't believe the Blackfoot has not come up yet. I'm so glad I get to be the one to talk about our sacred, glorious place, the Blackfoot Brewing Company, where I first met so many of my colleagues. And the other night we were there celebrating Eric, and Drew, Eric's dad, asked me, so could you explain how you professors from vastly different disciplines have become such close friends? I teach theology, for those of you who don't know. So Eric and I explore different wonders of the universe, math and theology. And I said, oh, well, it was here at the Blackfoot where we would come and gather and share teaching stories and maybe rant a little bit, but usually share our passion for teaching and share our passion for adventuring. And Eric and I became fast friends, and we had, I'd like to say similar teaching styles, although he was much more energetic than I am in the classroom. And I learned a lot from watching him teach something I utterly did not understand, because I got to just watch him interact with students, and I learned a lot from that. But the memory I want to share, and some of you have heard this story before, but it's one close to my heart, is I was on my first date, our first date, with my now partner and fiance, Ryan Hazen, if you know. And we were at the Blackfoot, and it was a beautiful May afternoon in 2016, and we were up there, and Ryan gave me permission to share this story. So Ryan had just asked me a pretty significant question about the status of our relationship, and it was hanging over the table. I had not yet responded when Eric Sullivan came bounding up the steps of the Blackfoot upstairs and pulled up a stool and said, "Oh, good, people are here." And, joined us with his beer, and he said, "I'm filling a growler. I thought I'd have my free beer. I'm so glad you're here," because that's made sense, you know, and he had no clue what he was talking to. So we stayed with Eric, and I think we parted out, and the question remained unanswered. It all worked out, though. We're still together. And I'm going to hold that memory so close because as Brian and I continue our life together, I feel that Eric blessed it with his presence in that moment. Clueless as anything, but yes. And we like to tease him about that story quite a bit. I have other stories from a great epic trip we took to Austin, but I'll save those for the mingling after to share with you. So, sorry, I almost forgot. We need to watch the slideshow, and then we'll get to the conclusion. So on behalf of John Anna and Eric's entire family, thank you all for being here this afternoon. to celebrate our dear friend Eric. We invite you to stay and continue this celebration in the way Eric would most enjoy, hanging out together over a good beer or beverage of your choice. Mobius strip creation is encouraged. That's a story from Austin, too. As are good movie quotes, probably bad movie quotes, too, right? And, of course, laughter. So, thank you for being here. Just before we go, Dr. John Seck, the president of Carroll College, would like to say just a few words, and then we'll begin the informal part of our celebration.
Thank you, Catherine. What a beautiful, beautiful celebration of Eric and Eric's life. Dear John Anna, Donna, Drew, Doug, Wendy, Emily, Jimmy, Julie, Brian, Clara, Dennis, Paul, extended family, Carroll faculty and staff, community friends, and of course, Aspen. My deepest condolences on behalf of the entire Carroll College community and family for the loss of our dear friend and colleague, Dr. Eric Sullivan. I've known Eric only since arriving to the Carroll College family in the spring of 2018. I shall never forget my first encounter with Eric was during the April 2018 Student Undergraduate Research Festival. He was incredibly proud that day and wanted to introduce me to the students who were showing their posters, who were presenting, and demonstrating their research. Every spring following, Eric would report with excitement the numbers of students who were going to be presenting in SURF for that year. Eric cared deeply about our students and what they could do here to give them learning and field experiences that were second to none. He was deeply involved in our global math modeling competition that we heard about earlier today, the 100-hour math competition. And one of my favorite memories was that Eric invited Victoria and myself to take some of those students out to dinner. We took them to the Silver Star for steak, but also we wanted to make sure that they had the nutrition that they needed to see through that final night with their competition. And so Victoria and I sent them off with the double-decker chocolate lava cake apiece for the all-nighter that they were going to have. And I should note that that particular project was focused on evacuating the Louvre Museum in Paris and ended up placing in the top 5% in the world. One of the students is here today from that dinner. And Victoria and I believe it had to be related to the chocolate cake. Eric was passionate about math and data. The Carroll Data Science program will live on as a testament to his passion. And I would like to thank John Anna and family for establishing the Dr. Eric Sullivan Data Science Fund, which will help keep Eric's vision for educating future data scientists, statisticians, and researchers in real-world applications alive. And I hope that you will join Victoria and me in contributing to this fund. Eric also played a very significant role in establishing the Carroll College Keck Observatory internship program on the Big Island of Hawaii with the support of Roy and Francis Simperman. The Keck Observatory is the largest telescope in the world on top of the 14,000-foot Mauna Kea on the Big Island. Yesterday morning, I received a call from Ed Harris from Keck Observatory on the Big Island, and he asked that I share the following statement from Keck at this celebration of Eric's life, and I quote, "Eric's impact in his life and career reached as far as the summit of Mauna Kea on the island of Hawaii, where his vision for opportunity for Carroll College students helped create a unique internship for Carroll's data science students at the WM Keck Observatory. We at the Keck Observatory counted Eric as a friend and colleague. His passing saddens us all profoundly, but his life gives us inspiration to continue the collaboration between the observatory and Carroll College. As we say in the islands, mahalo nui loe, Eric. To all our friends in the Carroll College community, please know we grieve with you today." Eric's 10 years at Carroll College were profound, and we will deeply, deeply miss him. I will miss him. His legacy he leaves an incredible legacy, and we as an academic community will come together to find a way to honor his name and memory and contributions here at Carroll College. As many of you know, and it's been discussed, Eric loved craft beers. And we are pleased to have craft beers with us today from Blackfoot Brewing, thanks to our good friends at Headwaters. This afternoon, we have an IPA, a cream ale, a milk stout, as well as some wine, coffee, and drinks. And I believe Eric would have been pleased by the beer choices. I ask that as each of you acquire your beverage of choice, to please lift it to Eric's name and contributions to Carroll College and say, mahalo nui loe, which means very much love, lots of love. A toast to you, Eric, our good friend. Thank you for the adventure.
You all needed to be dismissed by me, didn't you? Yeah. All right. This concludes the formal part of our program. Thank you, Dr. Sugg. Thank you on behalf of John, Anna, and Eric's family. Let's celebrate. Oh, I should say, I'm going to re-show the slideshow so that the music actually plays while we all go get our beverage.
Following you, I'm always in the direction that's...
Well, don't know. I've said it too long. Okay. There we go. Thank you. Absolutely.
Thank you.